was a proponent of processualism. He still is, but he's listened to his critics and now talks about looking into investigating the way cognition works. He's actually looking at neuroscience and saying, okay, yeah, we do need to understand individual perceptions of society, but I want to do it from a perspective of how psychology, psychiatry, and brain science works. Great, terrific. We'll use that. And Ian Hodder, who was one of his main Colin Renfrew's main critics, finally put his money where his mouth is. He talked for years and years about philosophy on top of philosophy on top of philosophy, and it became so airy-fairy that it was no longer grounded in real archaeology. And he finally put his money where his mouth is and spent 20 years digging Çatalhöyük, and he found, okay, yeah, some of these ideas work and some of them don't. And maybe the processualists were doing some things right as well, that actually I didn't see it because I was just critiquing them. But when you're actually digging a site, it actually forces you to deal with the material objects in a certain way. And so he now has implemented what he calls reflexive methodology, which is sort of a feedback loop of producing the data. And so we're kind of through that moment in the 70s and 80s and into the 90s where processualism versus post-processualism were at loggerheads. We're through it, and we all listen to one another, and we're all sort of working for the same team, thankfully. And then I talked a little bit about scale before, and I want to bring this up again because we also archaeologists borrow from history. And Fernand Braudel, French historian, broke the perspectives of how you write history into what he called the courte durée, the histoire événementielle, and the longue durée. And the one that archaeologists excel at is the longue durée. That is to say, the short span, the history of events, and the long span. The longue durée is the long span. And we do a good job at that, better than historians do. We do it. That's our main strength, is we can actually look at long time spans and how human cultures change in them. And these mechanisms of how they change have evolved from these monocausal, unilinear things where people are saying, aha, I found it, it's water, that's what we need to focus on. So the hydraulic hypothesis, technology of historical materialism, conflict and warfare of Carnero, and population growth and demographics also of Carnero, environmental circumscription, external trade. None of these things on their own explain social change. We actually have to take them together. So multivariate approaches are really the way that archaeologists try and piece together the way society changes. And for that, you need multiple specialists. So we have to work as a team. None of us do all of these things all at once, but we have to organize ourselves to bring all of those little pieces together to understand it. And then once we have all of those little pieces together, we have to look at theoretical frameworks of how social change occurs. Things like feedback loop, punctuated equilibria, which can explain things like a big man hypothesis, that maybe there's a big change that takes place periodically, and what's the cause of that? It could be environmental, it could be a big man, and I say that because that's the name of the theory, and it usually is a big man. You can have catastrophes, chaos theory, self-organization. A combination of any of these things are ways that we understand the way that social change transforms in a theoretical way. All right, so hopefully that explains the why of how we're of what we're doing here a little bit better. And I'll come back. We're going to start with the next chapter, and we're actually going to start applying some of these lessons to the past. See you then.